Hi everyone, in this video tutorial we're going to be going over the generic name structure for a correct acceptable IUPAC name. So the first thing to know here is that the IUPAC nomenclature system is the system that governs the correct acceptable way to name organic compounds. And there's a number of things that go into naming a compound and things that we have to specify for it to be a correct IUPAC name. Let's talk about those things. The first thing that we need to do is denote the longest continuous chain. We also call that the parent hydrocarbon, and this must include the highest priority functional group. So that's kind of a reference point, is this longest continuous chain or parent hydrocarbon. And then of course, if there are any groups coming off that parent hydrocarbon, we also have to designate those. And we call those groups substituents. They are groups branching off the parent hydrocarbon. And what we're going to do is give them locants, a numerical position on the parent hydrocarbon, reference points. Okay. Now, we also need to denote in our name the presence of any lower priority functional groups. And what we're going to do is denote those by using their prefix name rather than their suffix name. In a separate video, I will be going over essentially functional group priorities and the difference between a prefix name and a suffix name. So we'll get to that for sure. And then, of course, the last thing that we need to do, and this is when you'll get a little bit further in organic chemistry, we'll have to denote configurations. So this could be R and S or E and Z to denote different types of what we call stereochemistry. Okay, so quick recap there. We have to define the parent hydrocarbon, which is essentially our reference point for everything else in the structure. We will then designate substituents branching off the parent hydrocarbon, and we have to denote any other functional groups present in the compound. So now let's talk about the generic name structure, because this is really important to have down. In the name structure, we will have essentially a locant dash substituent dash locant dash substituent, our alkyl prefix, and then our functional ending. So these numbers represent locants, and the locants again are kind of the positioning, the reference point on the parent hydrocarbon. What you'll also notice is that we will name substituents, those groups branching off the parent hydrocarbon, in alphabetical order. And before each substituent that is named, we provide a locant and then we separate it with a dash. Okay? And then between the last name substituent and the alkyl prefix, there is no space. So we're going to give you just a quick example here to show how this is put into action. You might have a compound named 3-bromo-2-methyl hexane. Okay, this is a correct IUPAC name. Here we have a locant specifying where a bromine is on a 6-membered chain, and there's also a methyl group at the 2 position, 3-bromo-2-methyl hexane. Okay, so let's talk about this alkyl prefix for a second. The alkyl prefix essentially corresponds to the length of the parent hydrocarbon chain. Here that prefix is hex, indicating that there are 6 carbons in the parent hydrocarbon chain, that longest continuous chain in the compound. And then this last component, the functional group ending, for our particular example here, is going to be ane. A-N-E essentially signifies that the highest priority functional group is an alkane in the molecule. And again, in another video, we're going to be going over prefix versus suffix names for different functional groups. Okay? So that's just one example here. And let's just clarify a couple more things here. Remember, each substituent is assigned a locant, which precedes the name of the substituent, separated by a dash. Substituents in the name have to be named in alphabetical order, and there is no space between the last name substituent and the parent hydrocarbon with its functional ending. And if there was the case that we had multiple substituents, we would actually say all of their locants in a row, like 1,1-dimethyl. And we're going to use dashes to separate words from numbers, but we're going to use commas to separate numbers. So you might have something like 1,1-dimethyl cyclohexane. And the 1, 1 is saying that at the 1 position, there are 2 methyl groups here. And we use commas to separate those numbers. Okay? So this is just a quick intro video on generic name structure. And real quick, we are going to do one little summary here. All right. So again, here is your generic name structure. You're going to want to have this down. We have numbers dash substituents dash number dash substituent, which feeds into the alkyl prefix, which will be meth, eth, prop, bute, pent, hex, hept, and then some functional ending, which corresponds to the highest priority functional group in the compound, and that differs compound to compound. And remember that parent hydrocarbon, the longest continuous chain, it must possess the highest priority functional group. And that's an idea that I'm going to keep on coming back to in IUPAC nomenclature, because I find that is not stressed enough in most resources. So hang tight, keep on watching these videos. We're going to go through then the process of generating a name. I know I just threw out a random name example here, but we're going to go through the process and then through kind of the nuances of nomenclature in subsequent videos.